Hi there, Jordan. This is feedback for your lesson plan that you sent me for grade 6 music. I have the lesson plan up on my other screen, so if I'm looking off camera, that's what I'm taking a look at. First off, great job in setting this up. There's some key pieces that you have in place in regards to identifying detail, your correlation outcomes that are great. I'm going to give you a bit of feedback here to think about as you're refining and getting it ready for class. First off, like I said, great job identifying your general learner outcomes and your specific learner outcomes. Um, Fantastic. Your learning objective, we're going to clean this up a little bit, okay? Basically, you're asking, as I read through the whole lesson, that students can identify, that's what you're having them do, key elements. So instead of saying recognize, just go right to identify. Students will identify key elements of hip-hop dance and b-boying, and maybe a second one is students will distinguish the differences between hip-hop dance and b-boying. Okay, you might have that in, or you may be saying, in this lesson, I just want them to identify key elements of each one. They're not going to set up the difference, even though it's kind of inherent in doing that. One thing to keep in mind, and this is that next step in your lesson planning, is if I look at that specific learner outcome, choreograph and perform. Those two verbs are telling me something very different than identify. Okay, to really meet this outcome, students have to do it, right? However, there's been many times in my teaching career where you look at an outcome and there's got to be a first step before you get there. So I almost see this as lesson number one, and eventually you want to get to students will choreograph and perform a contemporary dance form. You'd be leading to that, even though in this lesson, maybe all you're trying to get out of them is that they can identify key elements first before they go into the performing. So this would be like a lesson one out of a three-part lesson, which is A-okay. But I just want you to understand the difference that if this was the only lesson you're doing, you're not meeting the outcome. Okay? I hope that's clear, and I don't want you to change anything. I just needed to illuminate you on that one, or else, yeah, you'd be in for some rude awakenings come PS1. Your assessment's great. I would again, in the assessment, that's how you will know if students have learned or understood. So you might just slightly switch that up, that students will demonstrate. The assessment is your observation. Okay, so observation of student identifying students correctly differentiating between the two, or that you're observing when they put their reasons up on the board, or that you're listening in on their conversations, okay? That's going to give you a real general sense of if the class has got it. It's not going to help you understand if students have it individually, but again, this might be that first step, okay? Two pieces that I want you to focus in on for your lesson to refine it, to get it ready for class. The first one is you need to put in time. Okay, you need to determine in your head how long each piece should be taking you if this is a 20-minute lesson. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll get into the lesson and realize, okay, we're about ready to watch the video, and oh my goodness, we've just killed 15 minutes. You need to put in those time elements. And I'd even, in my own lesson planning, I try and go right specific to this discussion should take 2 minutes, this piece should take 1 minute, this should take 5 minutes. Yeah, that's one piece that you're missing in there. The other piece is always go back to that question we talked about in lesson planning to say, is it possible for a student to disengage? Okay, you'd hope that they wouldn't, but right now when I look, there's lots of student responses, but it's very much directed to which kids raise their hand, which kids volunteer for this, which ones you pick on, and I mean that in a good way, to come up. I would try and put in place some of the things that you've seen in class, such as you asking a question and having them talk at their tables, or you ask a question and they have to discuss it in partners. You always want to make sure every kid is forced to talk at some point, because talking is the only way that we share what we're learning and refine what we're learning. So for instance, when you ask the students in your intro by show of hand if they think they can point out the differences between the two dance styles, depending on how the kids are sitting, if they're in groups, I would say Have the students at their tables for 30 seconds point out the differences, and then you're going to select tables to share, or then you're going to select students to share, or you're going to ask them to get up, find a partner, and share two differences, and then ask for some responses and put those up. Always find ways for that you're ensuring students are engaged and interacting, that it's not just I ask a question, whoever's hand goes up first, great, I'll write that down, on we go, because as soon as students get used to that in a classroom, it's very quickly some can just sit back and disengage because the other ones who are raising their hand, and they may be participating mentally with what's going on, but you really need to get them engaged verbally as well. Okay, that should give you a bit of direction as you're going through your refinements. If you have any questions prior to this microteach, just let me know. Okay, thanks.